So I'm constantly working towards that approval at the end, right? Because that's the best compliment is that they like what you designed and came up with them.
Hey everyone, this is Whitney Rosenson Sinkoff, owner of Art Dimensions, a fine contemporary art leasing and sales business in Los Angeles, and your Beyond the Palette host. In this month's episode, I am highlighting a different type of creative. As some of you may know, I usually interview visual artists from the ADI roster, including painters, photographers, and sculptors. Today, though, I will be chatting with a home stager. Marlene Craig is principal and owner of The Arc Staging, a home staging business here in Los Angeles and New York. I have had the privilege of seeing Marlene in action staging a killer condominium in West Hollywood, and I will tell you that she has impeccable taste and a great sense of style. I'm super excited to learn more about Marlene and her work as a home stager, and I know you all are as well. Hi Marlene, how's it going?
Hi, Whitney. Oh, that was such a sweet introduction. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today and for welcoming all of the listeners and me into your creative world.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So good to have you here. Okay, let's dive in.
Okay.
Do you have a background, or I'm going to include the word degree here, in interior design?
Funny that you say that. Actually, I probably have gotten into staging in a very non-traditional way. So my mother was a real estate broker. She had her own brokerage for about 20, 25 years or so. And so my sister and I were kind of her assistants as teenagers. And when she would get a listing, we would kind of be her team. And after she spoke with the owners about what kind of, okay, you have to remember this would have been in the 80s, okay? Not to age myself, but this would have been in the 80s when staging was definitely not something that people did. But she would go in and she would delicately have that conversation with the seller on things that they needed to do to prep for putting their house on the market. And back then, a lot of homes did not do a lot. They just put them on the market as is. So it really made her listing stand out. And she got such a great positive, response the first time that she was able to get sellers to do some things that she really just started pushing more and more towards it. So she would ask them to replace rugs or remove rugs. Of course, replace or remove art, replace or remove curtains, replace or remove pillows. Of course, the normal purging of a lot of things and replace comforters, beds, and things like that. It was fun for my sister and I because then we got to go shopping because a lot of times the owners had no idea what to do and what to get. And so we gradually, just through learning trial and error, we would make it our little project to pick out certain things within a certain price range and switch them out for the owners. So we did that for years, like I said, as teenagers. So that was kind of our first job. But as time went on, we slowly went into different fields. My sister ended up moving to New York, and I'm from Chicago, let me say. I'm originally from Chicago, Chicagoland area suburbs. And my sister eventually moved to New York and she worked for a relocation company. And so she would work for primarily people in the entertainment business, but other kind of consultants that would come in temporarily that would need furniture rental because the company was paying for their apartments. And she would work with realtors constantly on those types of deals. I started working part-time. It was like a second job for me. I worked for a relocation company, and I worked for when the company would pay for somebody to temporarily relocate or permanently, but most of the time temporarily relocate into the Chicagoland area. And I was kind of like a leasing agent. They would come in, they would fly in, and I would take them around. Well, they would give me a list of all the stuff that they wanted, a elevator building, it needed to have a dog park near, those types of things. So I would take all that information, look up all the available apartments, and find like the top 5 that I liked, that I thought, closely met that match. And then they would fly in and I would literally take them to those apartments. That experience allowed me to see staging, because a lot of times those buildings, even back then, this would have probably been the early 2000s, late 90s, the units a lot of times would be staged. It allowed me to see stage units. This is also the coming of HGTV time, and we started seeing a lot of that.
The shows.
So, yeah. And then, of course, my sister is in New York doing, the furniture rental, which is a very light version of almost staging a place for a client. So we were kind of in similar fields in that way. So as time goes on, my sister had built a relation. She's built tons of relationships with agents in New York, and an agent needed a place furnished. He didn't have a lot of money, but my sister's a very stylish person. She used to model for a short period of time in her early 20s. And he said, I just love your style. Can you do me a favor? Can you get some furniture and put it in this place for me?
Oh,
And
interesting.
she, yes, so this is literally how we got started. And she was like, I mean, I'm not a, I don't do that, because she at this point she was no longer working for the furniture rental place, but she had these long time relationships, or with different agents. They have become very friendly. And he said, I got this listing, has no furniture. Could you please buy some furniture? I have some money, and put some furniture in here. I love your style. I'm sure you do a great job. But of course, she kind of freaked out. You got to buy furniture. And obviously, within this small budget, you have to assemble it. So she called me, which was a $150 round trip ticket, which I would go to New York all the time anyway. I mean, from Chicago to New York is like, California to Vegas or something,
Right.
like it's not too big of a deal. And so she called me and she said, this guy, it felt like a boatload of money to us, gave me all this money to buy furniture and to put this in. Come help me out. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to assemble all this furniture. So I flew out there, and it was like, this is like when we were teenagers again. We're shopping and buying stuff and everything. So we're picking it out. But this, of course, we're also buying furniture, and we put it all together, not really having any other experience, but just what we see all the time, and just always had a passion for it, working somewhat in the industry and seeing a lot of it. And we put it all together, and he loved it. And he was like, oh my gosh, like this is really good. And so then after a while, he said, hey, I got another listing coming up.
Sure.
He said, you think you guys could do that for me again?
And you said, "Sure."
And we said, sure. So at that time, we just had that, and we had one little small unit, and we had about 2 apartments worth of furniture. And so we just kept it there. Every once in a while, he would ask for it, and we would switch it in there. But then he started telling a few people. And after we had did that on and off for about a year or two, we decided, let's go ahead and make a company out of it. Let's not just, we were still doing it on the side, but it was like, let's make a company out of it. But let's do it in Chicago too, because I was based in Chicago at that point.
So what year about, like, if you can recall, what year was your staging founded?
It's been about 15 years. So, yeah, about
Okay.
2010 or so. We started in Chicago. We did a similar type deal in Chicago, but more because she had deep relationships in New York. We were getting a lot more traction in New York, and it just really started to balloon. She had these really great relationships, so she went to the managers at the offices that she used to speak to all the time about furniture rental, and started asking them about staging, having, presentations, paying for breakfast. And it just started to really balloon from there. And just to speed it all up. So then years later, my husband went remote right after COVID, and we could live anywhere. And so it was like, my brother lives in California. He's lived out here for 20 years. Or, my sister lives in New York, and my sister was like, come to New York. And I thought, Robin, we could start staging in California if I go to California.
Right.
And so that's how
Bi-coastal.
yes, and so that's how it was started.
So cool.
Yeah.
I haven't met your sister, but I would love to one day, but you guys make a I mean, just from the work I've seen online
Oh,
and that West Hollywood condo that I saw, you guys do amazing work.
oh, good.
Okay, so besides your mother
Mhm,
and your sister,
mhm.
who are some of your greatest influences?
I don't have a particular designer or things like that, but I love to look at interior design.
Okay.
I can any of my free time, I will look at, interior design work online, on TV. You know how something that somebody always does in their free time? If you were to look at my IG pulls, you know how they kind of personalize them for you, that's almost all I see is interior design because I'm inspired and I think of like, oh, I could do that and maybe make a slight adjustment to that. That is something I just love to do. And I love to see how people or designers or, homeowners too, but how they decide how to fill a space and personalize it and things like that. I just love that.
Okay. That's a great answer. Thank you for explaining all of that.
Yeah.
As long as we're here and we're doing this fantastic podcast, let's talk a little bit an interview. I want to talk to you about art and home
Yes.
staging. All right. So how important do you feel art is to a staged home?
Honestly, and I'm not saying this just because I know that is what you specialize in as art, but it is the number one thing. A lot of times I start off with the art and design from there.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So once I've decided, if the owner or the listing agent, like in the situation in the unit that you saw in West Hollywood, if they say, I really like the color, blah, 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 green. And he said, I would really love to see some green. Well, I'm going to start off with that.
Okay.
And then I build around it. So art is number one for me.
Oh,
And it's
interesting.
where I start.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know that. When you're choosing art to hang in a home,
hmm
what do you look for?
Personally, my own personal and what you will probably see if there's a running theme in my artwork is I love abstract art because I primarily stage homes, right? So I want to have something that the masses will most likely like. So a lot of times I don't have as many portraits and things like that just because that seems to be a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
So abstract I find is appealing to the more of the general public. A lot of times, I will say what's different from New York is that New York abstract art can be a little, what is the word for it? I guess you would say has sharper edges.
Okay.
And the abstract art here needs to have more of a flow to it, I find.
Let's say in Los Angeles, why does the abstract art have to have more curvatures?
Well, I think it's because it's the more laid back kind of feel of California versus New York is, I don't know. It's something about the East Coast feel that they like a sharper edge to their art. And here they like maybe the flow of the ocean
Yeah,
the
makes sense
mountains
to
and
me.
everything. Yeah, and so that's what I noticed. And even though because I have worked so long in the Midwest and then on the East Coast, I still do have a lot of that there. And I feel like in certain areas you can do sharper edges a little bit more, West Hollywood being one of them. A lot of times that the buyers in that particular area, they want a little edgier look and they want a little sharper edges kind of a feel. A lot of times people want that kind of beachy, relaxed feel in most other areas, but West Hollywood does seem to lend itself more to, an average. Nothing is always, but
It's a little more like cutting edge over there. It's a little
yes.
more hip,
So it
not
allows me,
yeah,
yeah, it allows me to put a little bit more of a zing to the art, I think.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
What is an important place or room in a house for art? Like, what's the most important room do you feel for art in a home staged home?
So the very first place is the place behind the sofa. Not all homes have a really good entryway to put a really nice striking piece of art, and sometimes you really want to put a mirror there to kind of, open up the space.
Right.
And I do a few different things with mirrors to kind of, instead of just one mirror, sometimes I'll put several different sizes of mirrors and make it like a collage type of thing to bring drama, but also to open up the space. But the number one space is behind the sofa. You want to have, for me, my personal preference is a very large piece of art or 2 or 3 large pieces behind the sofa that really brings in, "This is what my color is going to be." And I literally decorate behind that art. That's my starting point, and I go from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what is the most overlooked room in a home that you feel is an important space for artwork?
So I believe, and because I see other designers work, and there's a lot of stagers that don't put art over the beds. And I love to put art over my bed.
Yeah.
I think it really helps to tie in your pillow selections and your other furniture and everything like that. So again, I look at my bedroom like my look at the living room. That piece of art behind the bed is my starting point, which determines what my pillow colors are going to be and my other furniture pieces. So, yeah. And I think that a lot of stagers don't really, consider that.
They don't, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So interesting. I never thought about that. I happen to like art above a bed too.
Yeah.
If it's got the putty and it's earthquake safe, it's fine with me. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about color for a little bit. I've noticed that you tend to use more neutral colors, blacks and white, black and whites. What about bold colors in staging? What can those bring to a stage space, and how do you feel about bold colors?
I do. I personally like them. I always take the lead from the agent. Usually, even though the owner is technically my customer, a lot of times they have emotionally disconnected from the home and they let the agent manage the staging. So it depends on what the agent is looking for. If the agent gives me the okay to go bold with some color, then I go with it. If not, a lot of times they go, I just want some creams and some soft, that kind of a soft feel, which is very popular, which is a very popular California kind of feel with the woods and the creams and things like that. Then I usually go with that. But if they tell me, oh, you can do a pops, you can do pops of blue or pops of green, I love it. I can do either. I love both. I have both. And even in my house, I have some rooms that are like kind of creamed and whited out, and then I have other color, other rooms that have pops of colors. So I totally get that. And yeah, so I take the lead from them. And I think that's the great part about doing staging is that you get a chance to do it all.
When you say a pop of color, I'm picturing like, a pillow here, a pillow there, a chair here, a chair there, something like that. But would you say that for staging in general, it's best to use more neutrals, more blacks and whites, and then you have a pop of color rather than, let's say, a red sofa?
So in New York, we have velvet blue sofas.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we do have a yellow sofa. In certain areas, that is really like a really great thing to have, especially in art districts of New York and certain other areas. They really want, we have a red sofa too. I just thought about that. So, we have those kind of pieces, but not here. We did have one blue sofa that we never used that we finally we
You finally
finally went on
sold.
and donated it. I think it was it's a little strong here in general. It's just not used as often. And
Okay.
because we're staging, you want to use something that's going to be a more commonly used item.
I totally understand. Okay, now
Yeah.
what about a difference between paintings and sculpture and
Mm,
photographs?
mm.
Which do you like to use more, or do you use all 3?
We are really starting to get into more sculptures for sure, and I love them. And they're such a great addition to designing a room. But again, and I'm not just saying this, art is number one, hands down. A lot of times you don't even realize how you don't notice a lot of other pieces in the room. You will first notice the art when you walk in,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why I like to have very large pieces, because I want them to make that statement. And then if you have, so for example, if I have green, a piece of artwork with a lot of green in it, then I'm gonna pop some green pillows around, maybe a green piece on the coffee table, things like that. So I'll pop the green around from there, but it all started with that piece of art.
So when you have a blank slate and you have an empty condominium or home or loft, do you choose the artwork first and then you start with rugs and then furniture, or what order? How do you like begin? Do you go shopping for artwork? Do you have your
I have a ton of art.
You've got a ton of art?
I have a ton of art and I'm always shopping for art. Yeah. So how I start normally, like I said, I take the owner. So I look at the place, right? And so I look at the home itself. Does it lend? Is it more traditional looking? Is it mid-century modern? Is it modern? I look at all those things, and then I take the lead from the agent. And if I feel like his idea is not lending itself to the home as much, I may try to sway it slightly, but a lot of times the agents kind of say, "You're the designer, just you'll know what, you what you're doing," kind of a thing, that kind of thing. So they'll just give you a few ideas of what they kind of think would be good or they like, and then they usually most of the time let you kind of go with it from there.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that's your job.
Yeah. If I say, well, this would lend itself to, like, yeah, I kind of see like maybe blue accents and a more soft modern look or something like that. And they'll go, oh, yeah, that sounds good. I like the color blue. But you want to kind of give them an idea, because we have run into that where we didn't kind of get an idea from the agent. And like the day or two before the staging, I remember this time in New York one time, and they said, "How's things going?" Da, da, da. And I'm just curious. So, what colors are you putting in the living room? And we're like, "We're gonna put green." And he was like, "I hate green."
Oh, no.
So,
You had to change everything up like a day before.
yeah. So, oh, change of plans. But yeah, so you kind of want to take that lead. But like I said, I usually kind of look at my space and I think, okay, so we're going with blue. Let me look at my blue pieces that I have in inventory. If I don't feel like I have a strong enough piece to go behind the sofa, then I will shop for one to see if I can get it in time for the staging. But usually that's my starting off point, and that's where you start off from there. And then the sofa depends on if I'm doing more of a just a soft traditional or a more really modern curved sofa look, and it'll kind of build itself from there. So
That
yeah.
makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I guess how I would start too. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
you start with the focal point and then you move
Yes.
outward, sort of like
Yes.
a concentric circle.
Yes.
Marlene, this was so fantastic. Thank you. I want to thank you. I want to wrap up a little bit. Well, you told us what inspired you to get into staging, but how do you stay motivated to keep things fresh and to keep creating great spaces?
That is the thing. Well, first of all, I love what I do. They say you probably work the hardest at something that you love to do. So I spend a lot of time, and I think it's one of those it's probably like anybody else in the entertainment business. You're constantly looking for that approval at the end. So I'm constantly working towards that approval at the end, right? Because that's the best compliment, is that they like what you designed and came up with them. So I'm constantly trying to make sure that each space is something that is visually pleasing, and it's going to be hopefully towards their target audience. So if we're trying to get that professional in the 30 to 45-year-old range, I'm constantly trying to think of my target audience kind of a situation. So yeah, so that's what keeps me going, and trying to constantly look at what's the new design trends and seeing what's new out there. I'm constantly but sometimes it doesn't work, or when you get it, it doesn't look as cute as you thought it was going to look, but that's part of design.
Okay, and what about personally? I mean, like, I'm just curious, and I
Hmm.
think the listeners would be too.
Yeah.
Do you jog? Do you walk? Like, what keeps your mind motivated and at the same time calm? Because you have a lot of work going on. You've got a chaotic schedule. You've got multiple stagings happening at the same time sometimes. How do you do that?
Vitamins and supplements. It's just something, just like anything else, we're all what do they say, a work of art?
Work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah, work of progress, yes. And I'm constantly working on it. And sometimes I do better than others. Right now, I'm kind of trying to set a schedule, but because springtime and fall is our really busy schedule, a lot of times some of your personal routine things are not prioritized like they probably should. But the good thing about it is we do kind of have a slow season where I'm able to have a little bit more me time. But you got to get out there, during the spring and the fall and make sure that you meet these deadlines.
Right, right. And hustle.
Yeah.
This was fantastic, Marlene. Thank you so much for guesting on the podcast today. I so appreciate your time and your thoughts. Listeners, please take a look at Marlene's Instagram and follow her there. The handle is at the at sign and then the ARC staging, ARC staging. And there you'll see incredible images of many of her stagings and her work. The new website is thearcstaging.com. And also, if you're feeling extra creative, please rate and review Beyond the Palette on Apple Podcasts and tell your art loving friends and family about the show. All right, Marlene, before I sign off, is there anything else you'd like the listeners to know about you?
I don't think so. You did such a great job of asking such great questions. I think I got everything in there. I just really love being in California. I love doing interior design and staging out here, and I would love the opportunity to work with you out there. So give me a call.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today to Beyond the Palette. I wish every single one of you and Marlene a productive, happy month and happy creating.